I think the value of this conference is that there's great attendance from a lot of contract research organizations. I'm Pablo Lapuerta. I'm Chief Medical Officer at Lexicon Pharmaceuticals. Lexicon Pharmaceuticals is a small company with offices in Houston, Texas, and Princeton, New Jersey. And it's about genetic technology and bringing that forward to developing new drug products. We're interested in strategic partnerships with CROs because we're at an inflection point. We're about to enter a large phase 3 program for type 2 diabetes. We have a program for an orphan indication, carcinoid syndrome. That's in phase 3, and that's a program that's very important to us and should be ready to file in just about a year. So entering that late stage, we looked at how we were working with contract research organizations and what we could get out of the relationship. We used to think that the contract research organizations were interested in partnerships with the large pharmaceutical companies only, and that we were too small for them. But we realized that they're looking for the next Celgene, the next Regeneron, right? The next Biogen. And they're going to depend on their growth from companies like Lexicon, who are at an inflection point and who can really go to the next level in the next few years. Well, we originally thought that contract research organizations were interested in partnerships only with the largest pharmaceutical companies. But we realized that they're interested in identifying the next Celgene, the next Biogen, the next Regeneron Pharmaceuticals. And they see that potential in Lexicon Pharmaceuticals. We're at an inflection point with programs that are in phase 2 but are going into phase 3 and are very promising and are very ambitious. We could do those programs with CROs, and they're big enough to have a meaningful discussion about a good strategic partnership over several years. You're never too small to consider a strategic partnership, and one of the reasons is there's a lot of benefit to working with a smaller group of CROs rather than simply looking for yet another one for every single project. There's a lot of benefit in terms of quality. There's a lot of benefit in terms of the relationship that you have. If you know a CRO well and have that relationship over several years, you can have a good relationship that is oriented towards effective problem solving. One of the things we did is we hired a director of clinical strategic outsourcing. And she immediately went to the CROs that we were interacting with and she asked, how could we do a better job? What did you think of our request for proposals? Was it incomplete? That type of approach, asking for feedback, opened up a broader dialogue about how we work with CROs and how we could work together much more effectively. And it led to a lot of these discussions about strategic partnership. For type 2 diabetes, we're ready to go into phase 3 and we've identified a CRO to do that with. And that CRO agreement is a strategic partnership that would encompass really a large scope of activities and would have a long-term relationship in place. Well, I think one of the most important things is to have an alliance structure where you meet regularly with senior leadership at the CRO. We didn't have that before. A few years ago, we were just working with one CRO on one project, another CRO on another project. And even though we were a small company, we were working with too many CROs and we're stretched too thin. When we started talking about a big program with a duration of several years of interaction, then the whole idea of an alliance structure came into place and there was a lot of interest in that. I think strategic partnering with CROs is a great idea because the CROs are looking for companies that are poised for growth. And if you're in a small company, don't consider yourself too small. I think that there's a lot of benefit in terms of the relationship with the CRO, a consistent relationship where you know the people and you can have effective problem solving. And I think there are a lot of opportunities to improve quality and to make your partnership cost effective. Well, I think a lot of the small companies have great opportunities for growth over the next several years. And if you start working with a company in phase 2 and you do a great job, I think you have an opportunity for a phase 3 business that may be 5, 6, or 10 times larger. Lexicon has a scientific platform where it has 5,000 different mice, each lacking one single gene. And those mice have been through extensive physiological testing. And through that, Lexicon has identified a large number of potential drug targets. For example, we have a mouse who's very healthy, but when you give it a meal, the sugar barely changes. The blood sugar doesn't go up. That's been the basis for our doing research that's developed a new drug for the treatment of diabetes. With Lexicon's discovery platform, it's taking us to study genes that other people haven't really studied in terms of clinical targets because they were concerned about safety issues. And we could enter these areas effectively provided that we had comprehensive data from patients. For example, type 1 diabetes is such an area. It is dangerous when you have a type 1 diabetic to change the insulin. Now, if you're adding an effective new therapy, it can be dangerous to not change the insulin. So how do you address a situation like that? We addressed it by working with technology where the patient would measure his blood glucose, and instantly the device would send that glucose to a database on the web where a Lexicon physician would have access. And that made the idea of approaching a new area in type 1 diabetes with an oral medication a whole lot safer. And we've been able to do some of that initial work in an advanced way, to do it quickly, and to provide for patient safety in the process. We're in another area, which is this orphan drug indication, carcinoid syndrome. Carcinoid tumors are a type of cancer that secrete serotonin, and it causes terrible diarrhea. These tumors are similar to the type of tumor that killed Steve Jobs. They're very rare, and they secrete hormones. We have an opportunity to control the symptoms of carcinoid syndrome. But to do that, we need to get information from the patient on a daily basis. So we have really taken into stride the whole movement towards electronic patient-reported outcomes. And we think that there are huge advantages by going there for both safety, when we talk about an area like type 1 diabetes, but also efficacy when we're thinking about our other platform for carcinoid syndrome. We learn from example. And so I look forward to seeing what other companies are doing and what other contract research organizations are doing and seeing what's on the vanguard. Where can we move forward to take our work with contract research organizations to the next level? Commonly, a lot of pharmaceutical companies that are small don't think that they're appropriate for strategic partnerships with contract research organizations. At Lexicon, we started thinking about it because we got into several dialogues with some contract research organizations over programs that were in transition and that were going to phase 3, and that would be much larger with that inflection towards phase 3 and late-stage clinical development. We hired a director of clinical strategic outsourcing who asked for feedback from the contract research organizations. Are we doing a good job? Are our requests for proposals sensible? Are they complete? Are we interacting with you effectively? And that type of solicitation of feedback got a great response. It led to a whole dialogue that lent itself well to the strategic partnering opportunity.